Welcome to The Lost Signals discusses film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzar-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, everyone. In honor of the 4th of July, which is tomorrow, the Lost Signals decided to celebrate the Independence Day with an Iranian film, A Separation, by, who did it?
It was Oscar Farhadi.
Because nothing says America like the country we're threatening right now.
That we're in a TIFO with, much like the plots of this movie.
But I want to provide a little context of why I wanted to do this, is that I feel that when you appreciate the art of another country, they no longer are the others, they are a group. Now you can find common ground and common passions with. And I think that this movie, as we'll discuss soon, does a fantastic job. I'm Jonathan E. Manser, here with Christopher Morgan.
Good evening.
Stephen Ramosi.
Oh, yeah.
And Scott Thurlow.
How's it going?
Okay. Well, I will start with the funny logline. Who knew the second world had so many first world problems?
Indeed. As tying back to your little intro spiel.
And I'm also referencing that in the Cold War context and not necessarily the modern context of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, blah, blah, blah. Scott, talking to you with plot.
Okay, so it centers on an Iranian couple, as you said, that is going through a tough time. The wife wants to go to... They just recently spent a lot of time and effort getting their passports. The wife wants to take her daughter. Actually wants to have her whole family go abroad. Or I know it said America, but just abroad. Like to leave Iran. However, the father / her husband wants to stay because he needs to care for his ailing father who's afflicted with Alzheimer's. Meanwhile, their daughter is sort of caught in the middle. It seems like she's leaning towards wanting to stay, not leaving her friends at school. I think she's 11 or 12 at this point. So that seems to be the central conflict, and it is, except sort of more complications are introduced where because of this situation, the wife sort of splits. They're sort of separated but not divorced per se. So the husband hires a caretaker, another woman, to come and take care of his father while he's at work. She happens to be pregnant with a daughter of her own previously, and they get into an argument over stolen money, accusatory, which leads to a sort of slight physical encounter in which it's sort of a flashback. It's almost a mystery, but the caretaker then has a miscarriage, sort of in the wake of certain events of that event, and then they sort of sue them. Her husband and her sort of sue them because of the loss of their child, and it becomes like a back and forth between the two families of how to resolve this, and they have to go to court, and certain facts come to light that were not previously clear, and some people are lying, some people are twisting the truth, so it ropes in their friends and family members as well, and it's all very tense, and it's just a very drawn out but slice of life kind of thing. It's just them dealing with this like very terrible situation on top of like something they were dealing with already, and it just sort of culminates in a kind of question mark, and it's the ending it needs to be, which we'll flesh out, I guess, but it was this intensely dramatic all throughout without being over the top, without being like cheesily about it, I guess I'll say. I don't know what else to say about it. But yeah, it was a very intense look at like things just happen in life. And like you think it can't, like you said, it's this common situation, or a common enough one that you can see happening in the Western world, per se. It just happens to be in this culture in this time. And it was a very deep and intense look at that stuff. And I think it was really, really well done. So I'm looking at a 3. Like, I think the script was super tight. I think the characters and the acting for sure was top notch. So yeah, man, like I was pretty compelled by this. And yeah, it's sort of like just, I don't want to say dry stuff, but it's the complicated life problems that people deal with nothing else like attached to it. With no, that's all there is, because that's complicated enough. So yeah, I'm looking at a 3 for score. It was a tight plot and a tight story, and very, very, I was invested throughout the whole ordeal.
I've said this before, that generally I always like these slice of life stories when they're done right. They're not glitzied up and so forth.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And this film it was a 2-hour film, and it felt like I was there with them like for 3 days. But no, that's not a criticism.
No.
That is how it should be. Because as Scott pointed out, I mean, the description of this reads basically, a couple is deciding basically to take their daughter out. Father has Alzheimer's. There's no description that really gets into all the little intricacies here.
Yeah.
And, I'll probably speak to the divorce aspect of it later, but this is this is one of those things that shows you even the simplest things. There's nothing simple about this. There's all sorts of little details from the courts, from, your neighbors, from your family members, anybody's motivations at any given point, whatever. I thought it was fantastic. I'm with Scott on it. It was a 3. I'm just awestruck by the attention to detail. It's a great film. I mean, we'll break it down later, but
Yeah, I mean, what I love about how this film is written, how tight but also complex the script is that I don't think any synopsis could really do it justice. One of you guys.
I think Scott did a really good job.
Well, I mean,
but
any like
Sure.
written synopsis
Like
that
log line
you're going to
or
get on the back of a DVD.
No,
cover.
but that's what I was saying to Scott's point was it's not an easy thing to.
No, absolutely right. But like that's what I mean. Like, you get the, wife and husband are fighting and getting a divorce, and also the father's involved. Whatever. Like everything that happens in this movie is important to the plot, especially in the first hour. Everything that happens in this movie is what's making this plot move forward, and I think that it's really impressive. Not only script, and the guy that directed it, Asghar Farhadi, as we mentioned earlier, also wrote and produced this movie. So this sounds like it was his baby basically, and it's a story that is highly dependent on a lot of things. It's almost like a mystery. Like it's basically, it actually is kind of a murder mystery, right? Like
Yeah, that's sort of alluding to.
Almost
Yeah.
in the vein of like a more down to earth, like Agatha Christie or something like that. There's a ton of important information that happens. There's information that we as the audience are privy to, and then there's information that we as the audience are not privy to until later in the movie. And I think they unfold that into how this plays out really well. I'd be interested to see what this drew inspiration from in terms of like films that came before it or stories that came before it, and if it had like mystery novels or mystery movies or something like that as some of the inspiration as to what made this happen, because the way that information is laid out is very much like that, even though it's a more personal story than those tend to be, which is what I really loved about it. Yeah, and I have no qualms about giving this a 3. I completely agree with you guys. I think I'm going to give it a 3.
So it's interesting because I didn't see it as a mystery movie while watching it, but you're absolutely right upon retrospect. I saw it more as a intense drama, family drama, which it balances all of those
Has
aspects
elements
so
of
well.
all.
Yeah, which it also
To-
is, for sure.
To go to your point about details, though, and I think all of you brought it up, there is no way to accurately describe this film. You can describe it concisely, but it misses the point
The
of
nuances
what
won't
things.
be there. Yeah.
So there's scenes that happen right at the beginning. I'll give you an example of this. And I did some reading afterward because I was interested enough about this film to research it more after it. Now, a lot of people were confused over the missing money. Well, the wife takes it out to pay the bill, the movers. And that's one kind of brush over scene that they never reference again. They never return to it. It's just, if it's a detail you picked up, you're privy to information. Other things are during trials, they're bringing up scenes that happened a half an hour ago in the film. Now, I'm not sure even though I watched it, I'm not sure who's correct with their description of what's happening. So it's an intelligent film for the way that you have to really be paying attention to the details in this.
I'm sorry, I missed that detail. Thank you for bringing it up.
About the wife paying the movers. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
A lot of people, like from what I understood, a lot of people missed that fact and were confused. But I don't think it's a fault of the film that confusion, because it's just
That's
you have
actually
to pay attention or not. Like that's.
I think that even goes more into like the kind of like the mystery movie like aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
you know,
they give you the clue if you're just paying enough attention to it. Yeah,
that's great.
So this movie threatens melodrama at times, but I don't think it ever
it does not cross
over
that line. Yeah.
to it, and it sticks well with a really well done. Even if it does have kind of mystery twists in it, it's grounded in both the genres that's trying to go for. I also have to say, and this is slightly skipping ahead a little bit, but every single character in this you either like or can sympathize with or feel sympathy for. And you're watching two couples that you want to see everyone happy in a sense, either because you like them or because you feel bad for them, but they're at odds with each other, both as couple individuals and also as the two families. It's a really deftly done work.
Yes,
it is a goddamn perfect movie, because it's like that detail is there, you saw it, but it didn't register. But like, that's life. There was no music in this until the ending credits. But to me, it's like, that's life. Like we were talking precast, there are little things when your parents get separated or divorced that you just know and don't really think about. Little things that you might not know, but they're like these little details where all of a sudden, the wife, as Scott came up with this, weaponizing children, because to a lesser or greater degree, intentionally or not, people weaponize their children, and there were little things. There's something she did towards the end with the daughter, which prompted Scott to say weaponizing the daughter, which gave me a flashback. It wasn't anything big. But the attention to details, there's no indicator, like this is not a piece of theater where there's a musical cue or there's a zoom in on them, or or a big thing made out about the movers. It's just something that happened on our way upstairs, and that is just perfect.
And one last is that you don't know what details will, like in life, but the small details that matter in the long run.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah. And because of all that, like, it's very impressive, like you all said, that it weaves it all together in a very, very compelling, 2-hour story of all these events.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, themes.
All right. So I think that this is a really interesting movie. It goes into a lot of discussion about home life in terms of what's going on with these families, especially the main family, right? Nader and Simin and Terma and Miss Nader's father, and it's this like really complex thing that kind of, in terms of themes, like boils down to this like family is messy type of deal,
as is life.
Yeah, and you see that throughout this movie. It's like family can be great and can really fuck you up, and like I think that's a lot of what this talks about, and the importance of these connections that you make, and perhaps how they can hurt you as well. And like, I think that there is also this this movie takes a shot at Iran itself, like perhaps the way that the government is run, or just how life there is shaking out at the time. It starts off on this scene where the mother is trying to get out of the country, and she wants her whole family to come with her, but the father refuses to go because his father has Alzheimer's, and he thinks he'll basically be screwed if he leaves, which somewhat bears out in the movie, even when he goes to work and comes home to find his father, tied to the bed and flopping around. But there's this whole really fantastic kind of examining of the networks between people. And if you notice, like, all the characters in this movie kind of interact with each other at some time or another. Like, the two daughters interact, the daughter and what's his name, Hajat, the husband of the housekeeper, interact even at school. Like, there's just all of these cross patterns of interaction that are really fascinating that I found throughout the whole thing. And I think that it seems like that was kind of a something that the director wanted to highlight was the importance of these interconnected networks in society there, like the way that society is set up there in Iran. And I just thought that was interesting based on how different that is kind of from how things are around here. Like, you're not necessarily going to have all this cross-referencing people, and because there are like different. Like, if this was made in America, I think it would be mostly focused on the two couples going at each other, and it wouldn't talk as much about the daughters or the father. They might be like kind of side pieces, like extraneous pieces in this. So I thought that was interesting, and I'll leave it there for you guys.
Your assessment of the failings of the American family unit is wonderful there. But seriously, one of the things I love about this is it's very much an exploration of marriage. And they do a great job of showing what I feel is the intent is to show the modern day middle class of Iran, and through the poorer to their current existence, but also kind of to juxtapose the kind of more, I would say, Western look at marriage, the ability to divorce, with kind of the heavy religious foundations of the poorer class. And I like that the director doesn't come down on one better than the other. In fact, he shows the flaws of both types of styles there. And also, you have rich versus poor, which is always a good conflict. And I love seeing, and this may be going to style, Iran through an Iranian's eyes versus a Middle Eastern country through an American eyes. And I got to see what's culturally important to them, what the questions they have in their society are. This is a fairly recent work, 2011.
11 or 12, I believe.
I was 11, yeah.
So, like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily trying to be superly profound, but I think it's exploring their culture very well.
Yeah, and I'll boil on that, like, framed through a very, like, commonly shared human problem, like, more or less, like, I guess we'll say, like, social economic convention, regardless of whatever culture or other, like, attachments are there within it. So, like, yeah, man, I mean, like you said, like, it's just that people are people everywhere, and they're going through this shit, and life is, like you said, complex and messy, and sometimes there are no easy and or right answers to any of this stuff. It's just like shit happens to people, and they're trying to deal with it. They're trying to live their lives and like have the best life they can within their situation. But it doesn't always work out. Like, what do you want me to tell you? And like you said, yes, framed through this sort of more specific culture and people and country and viewpoint even. But yeah, it's not that it can't be universal. In fact, I think that's one of the whole points of it. So yes, the sort of like not sub themes, but like more specific things you point out, Steve, like, family relationships, like going through divorce, and then like and then dealing with like almost like the neighbors, or like in a sense, right? Just like your general contacts throughout your life, and how those dynamics of those relationships shift and change, and given a tragedy, more or less, like, a difficult situation on top of a tragedy that sort of like was an accident, like, or like pretty much more or less, like, maybe unclear, like, and that's a point and strength of the film, and I think it goes to themes as well. I mean,
it's an accident brought out by a moment of
emotion.
An emotional moment, right? Like, he wasn't trying to kill a baby by any means, but he was also he definitely was trying to push her out of the house, but that doesn't mean that that's what caused the thing, like, right?
Exactly.
There's so much questioning.
It's like the murder mystery thing.
In fact, it's
probably
most
not.
likely not.
By the end, it's heavily implied, like, it switches almost, it subverts that murder mystery.
Not that
kind of
it
thing.
excuses his actions
Right.
to try to get
Right.
out of the.
It doesn't make him morally or right in any sense. It's just, again, that's just the heat of the moment situations that people encounter and deal with and don't think about, and then bad repercussions happen because of it.
That's another thing. I'm sorry, Chris. I know you've been trying to talk for a minute, but that's what I mean. Like, that's what I like about this a lot. Is like, it doesn't matter what anybody's intentions were at any point in this movie. It only matters what kind of happened, and that's what they're trying to get to. Like, despite the fact that they want to allow for everybody's intentions, they're just trying to get down to the truth at the end of the day. Anyway, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
I'm giving it a 1. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. There's a couple things. When I first started watching this, obviously I was involved in the story, and the first thing you've got, we're all noticing that keeps coming back is you kind of try to work yourself into the culture. What am I seeing? How does this world work? You're realizing like, okay, it's not so different, which to your point, why we're doing this film, which is important, but like the things that, one of the things as the person who's in the group is married and also somebody who's a child of divorce, there are little details that I noticed like that added to the dynamics of the family. Like if you look at her parents, they're together. They've got a nice place. They both have their faculties about them. There is this, and
You're talking about the mother, Siemens?
Seaman.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the wife's parents. And when he comes to see her, the house is organized. She's sitting there, making a salad or whatever. The life in their little apartment's chaotic. I'm assuming that he only has the one parent left, so that he's got to take care of, and that's a lot of work. And you get so you're talking about the different in terms of economic status between these two families. If you look at just a internal family, I guess cross section of I'm blocking the word, but if you're looking at the family dynamic, she in a way has a privilege that he doesn't have. She's got a more stable home. He comes in there and he's a wreck, and she's basically making her salad, being a little judgmental. And as I said, all these things coming in there, and when you get married and your siblings are getting married and what have you, you notice the dynamics of like the in-laws and the people and how that affects everybody. And it was just really something I twigged to. Again, as with the money and the movers, it's not something you would or should know about, but there is something in here. It's going to sound corny, but there's definitely something in here for everybody, that there is an experience somewhere in here. It's not glossed over. It's not Hollywood, or, it's very, very genuine. And it's very true. I'm giving it a 1, because with Steve-O, as with Scott, I would not have wanted that question, because there are just so many themes going on. There's just so many details to this film. And it's just like, I can't help but now think of the little details that I've noticed. And like, okay, this is what I can bring to the conversation, because there is so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So I have one last theme to bring up, partly inspired by what you just said. This movie is bookended by the judgment over the divorce. And through a major running theme throughout this is judgment. Really the movie's about the decision that the daughter finally makes about whether she's staying with her father or going with her mother. But you have more than that. You have the murder trial. You have the divorce trial. You have the creditors judging the poorer couple.
Hajat, yeah.
You have the family, as you said, making judgments. Throughout this, and in a way, it's also the viewer with more information they're giving. You're playing the role of the judge in a way of the information that you're getting to decide who's guilty. And it's complicated because life is complicated and it's hard to make easy judgments about things. But this is all about like the housekeeper and Nadir are both wrapped up in their motivation about not being falsely accused for something they don't feel guilty of.
No. Sure, for sure. And you're
Or
right,
even
that
just avoiding
consequences
having to,
from it.
having to pay the consequences.
Here's the thing, I think he was more interested in, because the wife points out, like, we can afford it if we pay the butt out. He's like, no, I didn't. Like, he at the end, he wanted, like, I want you to swear on the Quran that.
He's obstinate about his
that's
innocence.
true.
Sure.
Yeah. And she, like, I didn't steal your money. You need to say that I didn't steal money. A lot of this is pride and about not being unfairly judged, even though that's what
Everyone's
is happening
doing
everywhere.
anyways. Yeah,
One
you're
thing
right.
I also noticed was that, you had swear on the Quran, and everybody, religion does come into this, but you had the one woman, the housekeeper, the caretaker, the woman who lost her baby. I don't know how to say this, and please forgive my ignorance in the truest meaning of ignorance, is that she was the most person of faith. Like, I don't know how the denominations work, but even when she had to wipe the old man down after he soiled himself, she had to call, I guess, her cleric. I honestly, this is out
a
of
hotline to see if it
Yeah.
was okay for her to.
She had to ask. She had to ask if it was a sin,
Yes.
and she would not cross that line at the end because it was a sin, and I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah,
Like I
it
said,
is. But I think
complex cultural things are just complex human
that
things.
a lot. I have a grandmother who reminded me, not to that extreme of it, but had that religious angle to her, and it felt very believable of someone of deep faith who, in a world that no longer has moved more secular.
Cherishes it as much, yeah, sure.
Mm.
But yeah, like I said, all that stuff is wonderfully integrated in there and tragically at the same time. So
Yeah.
I have to give it a very strong one for themes.
Agree.
Okay, Chris, antagonist.
Everyone.
Life is shit.
This one's hard. Because again, as with anything, it's situational. Because on the one hand, she was going after that she was on the phone with seeing if she could. At one point, I can't remember the details. What point the father, the grandfather, Alzheimer's, wandered out, and you didn't see her that she was hit by a car, which then she lost her baby. So it's just like, I guess overall everybody's deception antagonized or exacerbated what was already going on. It was not a comedy of errors. It's more of a tragedy of omission. And it's one of these things where I can't really blame anybody overall at any given time. So this is going to be one of what Scott and I like to go with the nebulous thing. So I'm probably going to go with, tragedy by omission.
It's everyone and no one, of course. That's sort of you said. Like, and yes, of course, I'm going to say that. And I think I'm more justified, or it's more relevant to use the nebulous, like incorporeal, just invoking the tragedies, like the confusion of life and the chaos that causes, and just trying to deal with, again, cultural complexities, whatever they may be, and just being a fucking human person in this situation and trying to do the best you can for your family members and so forth, and make a living and survive in the current climate. So yeah, man, and like I said, that I think is always going to be the best. Like, trying to fight against life / like what the universe throws at you is always going to be futile, but it's what everyone is doing as a human being for the most part. So
Yeah. If every character in this movie didn't feel so goddamn antagonized all the time, I would probably give this a 0. But I felt like everybody was just under fire and stress the entire movie.
Various pressures from
And
various
it's
angles.
Like, yeah, there's nobody that I can point to who's like, you were the antagonist, right? Like, everybody is the protagonist at some point. Everybody's the antagonist at some point.
Yeah, that's
In
it.
this film. And it's not even like they were failed by the system or anything like that. There's points where, like, the system is, I'm like, oh yeah, that was fair. And there's points where the system, I'm like, fuck that system, like.
Much like in life.
It's like even those, but I mean, even those incorporeal, like, vague antagonists that we can sometimes point to are less cut and dry than they often are in
sure.
this. And, like, I don't know, it makes for a really tense, movie somehow, despite the fact that I don't think there's any real antagonist, right? Like,
But that's kind of the
and-
whole point, I guess, sort of.
yeah, I mean, I think that is kind of the point. And like I said, normally I'd be fine with giving this a 0 and just saying there's no antagonist. The movie's not worse for it. It's just not there. But there is an antagonizing factor to this.
Yeah,
Like,
man.
everybody is antagonized. It's just whoever is doing the antagonizing switches so constantly throughout this entire
Sometimes
movie.
they're antagonists themselves,
And
of course.
I have to give it credit for that.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, I'm going to give antagonist a 1.
It was funny is because at the beginning, because of my Western bias, it's kind of more on the mother's side. I'm like, yeah, she wants a better life, which was really arrogant for me to think of in retrospect. No,
Damn right.
yeah, it's completely arrogant. I realize that. But one thing and I also liked her. I thought she was a very good actress, objectively. But now that I think about it and we're talking about it, she's the impetus for all this. She wants her parent, her child to leave. But if you look at them with their kids, yes, she loves her daughter. They both love her daughter. But he's actually the one who's playing with her. It's like she has a tutor, but he's the one. You don't really see as much interaction with her as much as you do with the father. And I don't think that's just for a situation. As I said, it's just...
It seems like a couple where the mother is more pragmatic and rational and the father's more emotional bound. And that kind of relationship can cause conflict, which it does in this. And because she makes good points about we need to leave here for a better tomorrow, probably because the drone strike's coming.
Sure.
Sorry. But he's like, no, we got to...
Our
I'll
roots
get
are
to this
here.
thing, but yeah, like I'm Persian. He's more interested in like teaching his daughter about like Persian history and Farsi over Arabic, and kind of grounded more in his homeland where she's not. And again, it's everyone has good intentions in this way. The poorer couple. Of course, I'm drawn more towards the kind of suburban couple here because I guess they're more the main focus of this, but they're very sympathetic
Sure.
characters too. He seems to have issues and can't hold down a job. Your wife is trying her best to provide for them and their daughter, and they're soon becoming before she's pushed down the stairs and hit by a car. But I mean, like everyone has good intentions. I know. Sorry.
No,
Somewhat out of order, but yes.
but it's,
We know what you mean.
it is like
But
she's like a
hit by a
cartoon
car.
character in this fucking movie.
But no, she's not though, because she's actually very like sympathetic, and you understand where she's coming from.
Exactly,
Every
yeah.
character's coming from.
Yeah.
So I am definitely going to give it a 1 because, like, that's the thing is, I wouldn't say it's bad things happening to good people because they're not always good people, but they're
It's
bad things happening to real people.
It's life happens to everybody. Yeah,
Yeah.
God damn it. Yeah, exactly.
Which we go back to around to that. So,
Yeah.
1 everyone.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Stop dropping annoying things. Anyway, on to me with protagonists. So now we could say everyone because we said everyone is the antagonist. I'm going to go with something a little bit more nebulous here. That one, I would like to say that perhaps it's the daughter.
You're gonna make an argument for Tameh. Yeah.
Because it's really her story about how she chooses which parent to stay with. Even though we never find out, which is the betterment of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for spoiler. I don't think we brought that up yet.
No, yeah.
but,
I think I said it in the plot, but either way, yeah.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Does not
Anybody
say.
who's seen one
Previous
episode,
spoilers.
But it's also, in a sense, as I mentioned earlier, the judge and the people who are looking at the different cases throughout this. Because you're getting the information as they're getting. You're seeing how they're all the characters are reacting to the crime, the criminal trial that's going on. And
how
as
they're
the
drawn
judge
into it,
continues to make his choices. So I think that, again, I brought this as this is a movie heavy about judgment, and it's about all of the characters in there who are observing the situations.
No, I like that. And
interesting.
I thought one of you would definitely make the argument for Tameh being the protagonist, and I do like it because I was kind of debating it myself, like thinking of doing. I think it fits, but I think also like there's kind of a revolving door. Like certainly the main couple, Nadir and Simon and their daughter and Tameh, right? Like of course it's like broadly focused on them, but then sort of like they add layer upon layer. So then you get Hojat and
Hojat.
Razea.
Yeah.
right? So then you get their story, and they have a daughter too, and like you said, and then like the father, Nadir's father is tangentially there too, so he's like somewhat part of it. Like he's an important part of their lives, which affects.
I wouldn't call him a protagonist,
right, but I'm just saying like because it's their like familiar life and like the splintering thereof, and then introduced upon like this other like tragedy issue upon them, but then that sort of brings in the second couple, which they sort of then almost even out as protagonists, kind of. So, like, I just think you could do a revolving door, although probably a little bit more mainly focused, like 60, 65 on the suburban couple, as you said. But I think, like, whoever you slap it on, like, call it that for X% in the movie, then it's still a great job. It's a good protagonist because you're following then their story, like you said. And you can cut it up both ways, I guess. You can have your cake and eat it too, even though I never hate that phrase. I think in this instance, for this question, this category, because of this movie, the way it's so deftly handled, as you said, I think you can almost switch them off and still give them all a 1. They can every character can be said to be a protagonist at some point during the movie. I think,
say let them all except for Terme eat cake, because I think she is the protagonist.
Okay.
No, I agree with you on Terme. But I also was thinking about that. The smaller of the daughter. I would
Samaya.
I thought it was interesting because at the beginning, the mother's like, whose name I'm blocking. I apologize.
Rosea, the mother.
Rosini?
Which
Simon?
one?
The mother, the main mother.
Yeah.
Simon.
Timmy's mother. She's like, oh yeah, bring your daughter. She can play with my daughter.
Yeah.
And just watching her interaction at the end when the shit's hitting the fan with both families, Timea looks at the smaller one and the smaller one's twig to what's going on. It's kind of like kids know what's going on.
She did seem to have all the information like we did.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
That is interesting. Like,
True, yeah.
she had more information than we did, in fact.
Yeah.
Because she actually saw it happen outside the door, which we did not. We were on the...
Other
We
side of
were
it.
from Nadir's vision, in that when he pushes and then closes the door, and then Terme comes out and like opens the door and looks and sees that she's on the stair.
She's the one who tells Nitter that about the call to the gynecologist.
Yeah.
And like truth out of the mouths of babes, I suppose.
Yeah.
In a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
no.
I mean, it's
Like I said, it's messy, and perhaps like the protagonist role is messy, but I still think they're all going to get a 1 from me.
maybe the two daughters are both the protagonists.
I think
they're
a
the
case
ones
could be made for that
between
too.
the two of them. They have literally all the
the most
information.
information.
They have every piece of information in this movie that's needed, and I like this angle.
He's blowing his own
The
mind.
things that
Go ahead.
Termit doesn't have. She is like a detective and goes and drags out of her father.
Yeah, she Batman's him. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well, she just makes him feel terrible until he answers her. But yeah,
Oh,
like
Batman.
I'm gonna give it to certainly Terme as the protagonist,
All right.
and
good.
I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. I think that she's the main protagonist of this. It's mostly from her. Like, it's mostly, if not from her perspective, like what she gets out of this whole thing is what we get out of it. You know, like we're basically her surrogates
I see what you mean.
in the scenes that she's not in. Like we kind of feel the way that she feels about or would feel about things. I think.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna put it as her, but like I think she does. I think every character in this does an amazing job. I'll just say that right now. So like,
So you're giving supporting a 1?
yeah, I'm gonna give supporting a 1.
Yeah, it's funny because it bleeds
antagonist
over for
and
sure.
protagonist.
But yeah, my final thought is like, while I do agree that having that angle as her as a protagonist is strong, I might not buy into it as strongly, but I certainly think you can make the case and it's there. But even if I made the case I made, I'm still giving it a 1 regardless either way.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott, continue talking with supporting.
So it bleeds over, yeah. So like I said, you can sort of tie it in because it's a small, tightly knit cast. It's like 6 people maybe, at most the couples, their daughters, and like 2 or 3 tangential friends, the father, and like maybe the judges when they go to court, you know, when they're like arguing with each other and suing each other. But that means that they can focus very tightly and give a good fleshing out of all these characters, and even like some more side ones like the tutor. I think I got a good sense of her as a character.
Garai.
Yeah, Mrs. whatever her name was. Sorry, but I'm just saying like them and like even the neighbors, like they were like on screen even less and had less of a part, but they were still there, and I think it all built to the world. So, given for what it was, I give him collectively a very, very strong 1, without singling out anyone specifically. Just that I bought into this entire like soap opera-ish thing that was happening, but portrayed just very like grittily, realistically.
I'm gonna say the most important side character to me was the father.
Yeah.
The portrayal of Alzheimer's was very well done, and it also gave motivation for both of the couple, Nadir and Simon, for partly why she probably wanted to get out of there, even though I think it's so fascinating that he didn't remember his son's name, but he always remembered her name.
I love it too. Like, you know, like she clearly had some feelings toward him, but also being the logical partner was like, hey, he's not going to remember you anyway. Why are we sitting here? Why are we like ruining our lives for this? As she clearly thought they like, you know, their lives were being ruined, like staying there. And he was like, he's my father. Like, and then like there's a point where after he gets tied to the bed and falls out, he stops talking after that. And she's like, who cares? You barely talked before. And Nadir says like, I liked it when he talked even a little bit.
He said something at least. Yeah.
Sure. And like that is he is such a phenomenal. I shouldn't say it that way. He's a very important and like integral.
He's the linchpin of the narrative.
It is, and like he's the reason they stayed. Like right, he's the reason that they all didn't get out of there. So like he's the reason that everything happened to them.
Yeah,
and like not saying that it's his fault in the same way, like directly, like no, in the same way that like. The wife gets blamed at some point because she left the house. That's why all this stuff happened. You know, it's not like a blame thing, but like it's the linchpin of the story, and like that's
the bad situation that happens to be like we said.
That's where the whole story comes from.
That's a good point.
I love the supporting characters in this. All the teacher who was who was doing tutoring was really good, and
the judge.
The judge was good, and like even if you consider the Rosé and Hajat supporting characters,
yeah, of course I do. Like for sure, like again,
they were great.
They can split the difference between protag and here, but they still did a great job. Whatever role they they sort of like shuffled into at any given point throughout the narrative.
Absolutely. So I give that a strong one.
Just a quick thing, because we're considering them all supporting and to bring some levity to this heavy story. Nadir and Simon remind me of Beth and Jerry. From
yes,
hold on.
That is correct.
Hold on. Oh my God, they're codependent. That's probably what you want to. Right.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this is not only does every supporting character add something, because one thing that it reminded me of is Nadir, when he was in handcuffs and the guard that was taking him, at some point, I don't know if this was, improvised or if it was just something the camera caught or whatever, there was some little mix-up about which way they're going or something, and they both kind of looked at each other and had that momentary, like they shared that, slight chuckle, whatever, that kind of just broke up whatever thing. And I like that. That is just like one of those small details. I don't know how it got there, but
I think it was on purpose.
The movie was better for it because in that moment, it showed that everybody kind of can appreciate the humor thing. It did add that little touch of levity, even if it's for a moment. So like even on the strength of somebody like that, I'd give it a 1 because I don't feel like there's a supporting character that was ever wasted.
Yeah.
I mean, the only people that really didn't have any consequences were the people that were the non-players, the extras in the background who are just wandering about.
The NPCs?
The NPCs, right.
But sure, like I said, because it was so tightly constrained and like the cast, the general players were a small enough pool that they all had their chance to shine and be focused on and just be highlighted.
True.
Yep, 1 for me.
Okay, Steven.
Yes.
Dialogue.
Dialogue was amazing. Loved the dialogue. It was, despite the fact that it was a foreign language to me, was some of the most naturalistic dialogue that I've seen in a movie in a long, well, maybe not that long of a time because we've seen some pretty good movies lately, but like it was dialogue that really grounded the script perfectly in terms of like you knew who this family was like right away by the way that they talked to each other, right? Like there's almost like an instant thought of like, oh, this is going to be like a very strange movie because it's foreign, or like, we watched Delicatessen recently, and that was like just a weird movie, right? Like this movie was so grounded and human in a way that like that type of movie was meant to be bizarre. This type of movie is meant to be humanistic. Like very much wants you by the dialogue and by the way that these characters interact to recognize yourself in them in some way, whether or not you agree with them or not. Like the very going like running the gamut from like Nadir, who is like you said, like we said, like kind of emotional, to Simon, who's like kind of logical in terms of her way that she spoke and like interacted, to even like Roger, who's like very, or Rose, or I'm sorry, I'm terrible at pronouncing these names, but like who was very she was very religious. Like I'm not religious at all, but I understood her where she was coming from a lot of times. Like, and that goes a lot to her dialogue. So I think that the dialogue was great, and the way that they got pretty much every character to interact with each other throughout the film was pretty phenomenal. I'm going to give it a very strong one.
What I liked about it was everybody had a voice. It wasn't like you were hearing it from the writer's voice, but everybody had a voice. Like, back to what I was saying about the in-laws. I mean, Nadir is having a hell of a day. He's talking to his wife. I keep screwing up everybody's name, so I'm going to be descriptive. Yeah, Simon. And they're basically nonplussed. Her parents are basically nonplussed about everything. Like, oh, your dad's in the car, bring him in. Everybody, it's just like they live in a different reality. And it's like the dialogue's very naturalistic. It is as it should be. But I like the fact that everybody had their own voice. You're not hearing the writer's voice, but everybody's got their own voice. I'm giving it a very strong one.
Yeah, it was distinct. I don't have much to add, but like it was just snappy and like just sharp as hell. Some of it cut really sharp, like as it needed to be. Some of it was sort of like more soft, but all of it believable. All of it, like every character, every word that came out of all their mouths, like you said, Chris, they each had their own bent. You understood where they're coming from, given what was come up before, and then when they introduced like sort of more of the murder mystery like elements to it, if you will, like that was not mishandled. It wasn't like they were shoehorned in or anything like that. So I was sold early and bought into it the entire time. The way the dialogue shook down, so I'm giving it a pretty damn strong 1.
Going back to the detail, paying attention to the dialogue is very important because one sentence a person says could become important much later on.
Exactly.
But I think I also mentioned the Persian identity, and I was actually sorry that I didn't speak Farsi and maybe Arabic to a certain extent. I'm not sure if they ever use the two languages, like the different
together,
characters play the different thing. Like, did the more religious woman speak primarily Arabic?
Right.
I mean, that would make sense to me because that's the language of Islam. But I missed out on that angle. But there is one part where they bring it up where she's studying Farsi and the father is there and he goes, "No, that's how they say in Arabic." The daughter's like, "Oh, that's how they taught me." He's like, "No. Even if it's wrong, you get points off. You're going to say it in Farsi." I'm like,
I love that.
Yeah, it's great, but it's great to his identity. Dialogue, establishing identity as well as imparting information is great. I mean,
yeah. So there's that layer to it for sure. So it all worked very, very well. Like you said, Zivo, just the script is so fucking tight in this film. It's as impressive as hell the way they give each character voice, as you said, and that angle as well, like shown through, and it all made sense.
It is. There's. I mean, I don't know where else to mention this. I mean, maybe in style next. So I'll talk after Chris.
You don't know where else except the exact question you're about to answer.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could do it then.
All right, Chris. I think Steve will give you the lead in.
All right. Style of this film. I don't know where to begin on style of this film. All right, start off with there wasn't one musical cue until the credits started to roll, which, as I said, I think added to the verisimilitude. I loved when the director would choose to use a handheld versus a Steadicam. I love it's. This was a very warts and all kind of picture. And, there were a couple times when I was seeing the nighttime, I'm like, oh, it looks like such a beautiful night. There's this part of Iran, we don't know where in Iran this is. This is going to be any neighborhood, but you got to see the beauty of the neighborhood. You've got to see the traffic, which sucks for everybody. But then you got that one shot where, the caretaker goes to see Simon, and they have the shot where you could see the women from the outside through the windows, and you could see the sky behind them and the flags going, and then the lights that light up behind it, and it was just such a striking image. That one thing, and it looked like I could feel the summer night, or to me it would be a summer night. You can kind of get the whole sense of it. It was just, the film was just gorgeous and beautifully shot, and I'm going to leave it there, but it's getting a very strong one.
A quick point I want to make here, though. It wasn't selling it on as a tourist destination.
No.
Using shots that would... No, it's for
people on the
Indians.
streets and people in their
Yeah,
houses.
It's daytime light.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's
like going to
about their world.
Yeah, it's like going anywhere. It's just like, oh, this part's shitty. Oh, this part's really nice.
Yeah. So, I guess stylistically... Oh, I do want to bring up one thing about this. I like how the use of kind of a lot of it felt like voyeuristic shots during this, and particularly when you have people having a discussion and like just in the background, like you could see the daughter like watching them or
through the door.
That happened so much.
Yeah.
There was so much voyeurism, like just like looking through that happened with the sister-in-law. When the other Roger and Hajar were having the argument, and he's like, go sit with everybody else, and she's like looking through the fucking window.
Yeah.
Well, and to the point you were saying, and I'm sorry, I don't want to, but to the two daughters we were talking about before, at the scene where all the shit's hitting the fan with the two families, you talk about voyeurism. The two daughters shoot each other a look. They know what's going on. They're voyeurs. It's like
that's one of the most beautiful scenes in the movie.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to speak to.
And actually, the final shot with them standing on the opposite sides of the hallway, beautiful.
Yeah.
Now that reminded me a bit of Call Me by Your Name, just like
I was
the
gonna
way.
say that's the exact same
So
thing.
I'm stealing that from you. Sorry, but yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned it that it was so personal, like intensely. Like it reminded me of Bill Street. In fact, that's the one that came to mind, just because the way it was shot is made you feel as if you yourself, of course, were a voyeur. Like you're watching characters be voyeurs, and you are also in a voyeuristic sense yourself. So like you were intensely there. What?
No, watching him watch.
Watching him watch me right now. Yeah, it's the modest mouse thing. Sure, but it was shot like that to like specifically encapsulate that effect, and man, did it work. So yeah, I got to give it a 1.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has stolen like 3 of the things I was going to say have been said already.
What was the 4th thing so somebody can steal it?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. You got me, Chris. Anyway, I really loved the cinematography in this film. It's pretty incredible. The emotion that's captured in some of the shots that went through this, and like you said, that final shot of the movie. Not only was it one of the more memorable shots of pretty much any movie I've seen, but it did have that like "Call Me by Your Name" essence
sort of vibe
to it. Like at the end of the movie, there's just this like you're left on this uncertain and really melodramatic, not in a bad way melodramatic, but like just
But they earned that.
a very like sad vibe, like it's just no matter what happens, it's not gonna be good for somebody, like.
And you like both of the characters.
Yeah, exactly. And you want both of them to win, and they can't.
No, this might be going to something else, but there's one part when I think the daughter calls out Nadir and Vader, just ask her to stay, and she'll stay. And you see him walk off, and I'm like, "Oh, you
Well,
just
no.
ask her."
He promises to do it, and then he's like, I couldn't do it. And she was like, what the hell you promised?
Yep. And
There's
that's
one
life.
particular one where I was angry at him for being so stubborn,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean it's credit to the film that it got you to like get in that mindset because of the way it is down. So yeah, style, very strong one.
So just to finish on that, though, I think this is a fantastic film. Of all of the foreign language films we've done this year, I like Cinema Paradiso better.
I was gonna say which one I knew you were gonna.
But this is a very,
It's up
very
there.
close second. This is not a good Iranian film. This is a good film, and it should be seen by people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. I'm just going to paraphrase or rephrase that. In fact, like, yes, see this film. It's not like a lighthearted sit down and like have a good time, but it is a piece of art and just is a great story, as you said, just within its medium. So highly recommend it for sure, 100%.
This isn't a feel-good film of the year. No, this is reality. And I know I was just thinking,
This is reality.
This is reality. But yeah, I think everybody can bring their own experience in this. And notice thing, obviously, keep noticing the divorce angle because that whole thing that you were just talking about, the stubbornism and everything. I'm like, oh my god,
Stubbornism.
the stubbornism, the father being
Stubbornness.
Nadir being stubborn. And the last time I saw a film where I noticed the parts of divorce and separation to such detail was The Squid and the Whale.
I still have to see that.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, if you're a child of divorce, be prepared to be angry at both of your parents, no matter what, for the next 2 weeks. Which is what I couldn't
Okay,
speak to
then.
either one of my parents. But what I'm saying is, everybody can bring something to it. To me, this is that on top of everything is what shined through, to lack of a better word, for me. It's getting a very, very, very strong recommendation from me. I think this is a perfect movie.
A Separation, very good movie. I highly recommend it. I'm going to ask a question after this, but I might as well just answer it now. Maybe we all can.
Go ahead.
Does this deserve a 10?
Yes, I think so. At this point, it's definitely earned it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question we ask when something gets a perfect 10, which this is about to get. And I think that it does deserve the 10.
Yeah, I think it fires strong on many, many points, and it's very impressive the way it melds them all together.
I mean, just to rattle off some accolades this received: Oscar, Best Foreign Film. It got the Oscar. It didn't win, but it got nominated for Best Original Screenplay, which is very rare for a foreign film.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Golden Globe. It won 4 Golden Bears from Germany. It's on the.
It's the coolest fucking
Yeah.
award I've ever heard of.
Of course.
I want a golden
Germany,
bear.
And it is
I was just going to say that.
number 21 on the BFI's top 100 foreign
Nice.
films. And I like to actually check out the rest of the list if it's this kind of quality films.
Well, when we're done with the AFI, we should do the BFI.
We'll move on to that,
Top
but
100.
sure. But this one
We're
definitely.
done with one already.
But yeah, as you said, this movie definitely deserves a watch. Like, again, it's not lighthearted, but it is something to be seen and just appreciate it for what it accomplished.
Okay, well, I'm Jonathan E. Menzer here with Christopher Morgan,
Thank you and good night.
Stephen Ramosi,
Have a good one.
and Scott Thurlow.
Happy Western holiday. See you next time. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Jonathan E. Menzer. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or Mott's?